Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're equipping you with a highly practical toolkit to navigate the, let's be honest, pretty treacherous waters of venture capital. Look, if you're a new startup founder, you've likely poured your blood, sweat, and tears into building your company. But the literal second you take on outside capital, your ownership is on the line. So today, we're looking closely at exactly how to defend what you've built.
Here's our step-by-step playbook for today. 1. The threat to your equity. 2. How dilution actually works. 3. Internal defenses. 4. Navigating term sheets. And 5. Mitigation strategies. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The threat to your equity. Okay, before we even think about venture capitalists, we have to establish what's really at stake here. Take a look at this quote. It perfectly illustrates that failing to structure your company cleanly right from the start means building a 100 crore startup in India becomes, well, a game of luck, not leadership. If your IP isn't properly transferred or you don't have a formal employee's stock option plan, you don't just lose money. You lose credibility, you lose the trust of future investors, and ultimately, you lose control of your own kingdom. And in the startup world, time is absolutely your biggest currency. Fixing fundamental structural mistakes later, that's going to drain that currency incredibly fast.
Moving right along to Section 2, how dilution actually works.
Now, dilution is an inevitable cost of high growth, for sure, but it is one you absolutely must aggressively manage. As a founder, you're constantly walking this tightrope. You're balancing the heavy cash you need just to survive and hit that next big milestone against the slices of the ownership pie you have to give away to get that cash. Raising capital fundamentally shifts the power structure.
So here's the crucial thing to understand. Dilution itself isn't inherently evil. It just happens because a company issues new shares to secure capital, for growth, product development, expansion, the whole shebang. But, and this is a big but, each new funding round worsens its overall effect. If you're not paying attention, you could literally wake up one day and realize you only own a tiny, tiny fraction of the business you started.
All right, let's actually look at the stark mathematical reality of valuation. Say your startup needs to raise $50,000. At a higher pre-money valuation of $150,000, your price per share sits at $1.50, meaning you issue about 33,000 new shares. Pretty straightforward, right? But if your valuation is lower, say $90,000, your share price drops down to 90 cents. That forces you to issue over 55,000 new shares. You are giving away significantly more of your company for the exact same amount of money. And wow, here is the real pain of that lower valuation. Because of all those extra shares you had to issue, an early investor who previously held a very comfortable 10% stake in your company drops all the way down to a 6.4% stake. This right here shows precisely why you must protect your valuation to protect your equity. A lower valuation means severe, painful dilution for absolutely everyone already on the cap table.
All right, Section 3, internal defenses, co-founder equity. Did you know nearly 2/3 of startup failures are actually due to co-founder conflicts? Imagine this. You start a company with a friend and split the equity 50-50. 6 months later, they decide to quit, but they get to keep their half of the company. Your startup instantly becomes completely unfundable. No new investor is going to put money into a company where a massive chunk of ownership is held by someone who isn't actively creating value. This is known as dead equity. And believe me, it is absolutely toxic. But don't worry, you can shield your company from this toxic dead equity. How? By tying founder shares to performance and time. You do this through time-based vesting, typically spread over 4 years, and a 1-year cliff. That cliff means if someone leaves before their first full year is up, they walk away with exactly 0 equity. You'll also want to allow for dynamic adjustments to equity splits, because let's face it, roles and value creation change over time. And finally, secure formal shareholder approval for founder compensation packages. Trust me, it'll help you avoid some seriously nasty legal disputes down the road. Which brings us to Section 4, navigating term sheets, external defenses. So, with your internal house totally in order, let's step into the jungle of external financing. When an investor hands you a term sheet, they are setting the rules. And here's a scenario you're almost guaranteed to face. Investors are going to demand you set aside 10 to 20% of your stock in an option pool to attract future employees. Now, you might be thinking, great, we're creating this pool together. But wait, who actually pays for it? Well, the painful truth is you do. the option pool is almost always carved out of the pre-money valuation. That means you, the founders and your early employees, absorb 100% of that dilution instantly, and that happens before the investor even puts a single dime into the company. If two term sheets offer the exact same valuation, but one requires a much larger option pool, that one is actually a way, way worse deal for you.
Okay, another massive trap in term sheets is the liquidation preference. This dictates who gets paid first when the company is eventually sold. Standard venture deals usually use non-participating preferred stock, where the investor essentially chooses either get their original money back or convert to common stock and share the profits with you. But listen closely, you must fiercely negotiate against participating preferred stock. This sneaky little provision allows investors to double dip. They get their full investment money back first, and then they take their percentage of whatever is left over. It can literally drain the returns that should rightfully go to you and your hardworking employees. No way do you want that.
Let's head into our final section, Section 5, Strategies to Mitigate Dilution.
Now that you know exactly where the traps are hidden, let's establish your rapid-fire defense playbook. Defending your cap table really comes down to 4 exact steps. First, raise only what you need. Over-raising early gives away too much of your company on the cheap, while under-raising just kills your runway. Second, if you use safes or convertible notes, master the valuation caps and discounts so you don't accidentally give away a massive chunk of equity later on. Third, negotiate anti-dilution provisions. And fourth, seek out non-dilutive capital. Let's break those last 2 down.
So, anti-dilution provisions. These act as a shield for investors if your company's valuation drops in the future, something we call a down round. Now, hear me on this. You should never, ever agree to a full ratchet. A full ratchet forces the company to issue tons of free shares to the investor just to make up for the price drop, which pushes literally all the pain of the dilution entirely onto you, the founders. Instead, you've got to demand a broad-based weighted average provision. This acts more like a balancing scale, softening the blow for existing shareholders and just keeping things fair across the board.
Finally, remember that the absolute best defense against equity dilution is simply not selling your equity at all. Seriously, before giving away another piece of your company, explore non-dilutive capital alternatives. Look into government grants, revenue-based financing, invoice discounting, or procurement finance. These methods allow you to secure the capital you need to scale up without sacrificing even an inch of your ownership. It's a real game changer. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative thought to chew on before you sign your next term sheet. When you bring on venture capital, it's no longer just your company. Control is shared. So you have to ask yourself, are you building a kingdom you actually rule, or are you just renting it from your investors? Think about it. Keep your legal structures clean, mind the math, protect your cap table, and thanks so much for joining me today.